So one of the very first things I've learned about the universe as a child was that it began with the Big Bang. And, the traces of this event are actually still detectable in the form of something that in astronomy is called the cosmic background radiation or the cosmic microwave background. And this cosmic microwave background is a sort of remnant of the very young and very hot universe when individual atoms assembled for the very first time. I always imagine this sort of cosmic background as if universe were silently glowing in all possible directions. And this silent glowing can be detected only through the use of special instruments that are capable to detect microwave radiation coming from the universe. Only recently I've learned something quite new, that just as the visible universe has its invisible but active background that can be actually seen only if you look properly, so our social and our political worlds have their cosmic backgrounds. Of course, these cosmic backgrounds of our social and political worlds do not consist of microwaves or other form of radiation, but they consist of ideas about the nature of the universe and ideas about the humanity's place in the universe. All these questions are belonging to the realm of a scientific discipline called cosmology, which is a discipline that is both astronomical and philosophical. This discipline of cosmology collects some fundamental views about how the universe is structured, what are the laws that govern the universe, as well as how this structure and these laws affect our lives. And now, my aim in this talk is to persuade you about something. I want to persuade you that if we want to imagine a human digital Earth to come, we need to begin first with imagining a new cosmology, because it is cosmologies that are the main driver of social change, the change in our society. So to explain this, think of social change as a process that consists of two layers. And the first one, the one we usually think about, is the superficial level of politicians, states, institutions, international organizations, and so on. That is the layer where we usually think the social change happens. But in fact, the change that we see here stems from a deeper layer, the second layer, and that's the layer of cosmologies, the cosmologies that drive our ways of organizing society. Let me tell you a story to explain this. Let's go back to the 16th century, when between years 1570 and 1574, there was a spectacular machine which was created at the Cathedral Notre Dame in Strasbourg. It was a giant astronomical clock, which was capable not just of showing exact time, but also showing movements of celestial bodies, spheres of stars, planets, and so on. Almost a century later, British thinker whose name was Robert Boyle visited Strasbourg, and he marveled at this miracle of modern Western engineering. And Boyle also took opportunity to use the clockwork as an example of the universe itself. His argument was that just as the astronomical clock consisted of 1,000 small individual parts which were finely tuned to smoothly work in the whole mechanism, so the universe can be thought of as a gigantic mechanism, a gigantic machine where each individual part obeys the general laws of nature. And these general laws of nature guide each individual to smoothly work in this cosmic edifice. And this cosmic edifice had one particular aim, according to Boyle. The aim was to manifest the glory of God, the divine engineer. Just as the complex technology, such as clockworks, led to the formulation of a new complex view on the universe, so did also this view further influenced the way how early modern thinkers looked at our societies and how it works. Well, many political thinkers of this era devised views of society as consisting of individuals that enter a relationship which obey very strict laws, resembling those observed by Robert Boyle in the realm of physics. Since the era of these thinkers was also an era when knowledge became an equivalent to power, understanding laws of society was also a necessary step to a proper exercise of power in society. What started as a cosmological metaphor ended as a cornerstone of aristocratic regimes in early modern Europe. Now let's move to the half of 20th century, to the birth of another cosmological metaphor. After the Second World War, the field of computer science flourished, and it gave also birth to a new general discipline, the science of cybernetics, which was a science of complex systems and the science of understanding these systems, and also science of steering and controlling these systems. The system cybernetics studied widely varied from computational machines to natural ecosystems, and cybernetics approached these different systems not as sums of individuals which obeyed strict laws, which was the case of previous cosmology, but as dynamic walls which are capable of self-regulation thanks to something that cybernetics called feedback loops, which were recurring patterns of responses to outer change and also patterns of reinforcements of these responses over time. One example is a computational algorithm, for example in your phone, that learns how to recognize your face, and it gets better in this over time. Another example can be an animal that adapts to a warmer environment, or a forest ecosystem that collapses because of the lack of precipitation or because of too much precipitation. Cybernetics, on top of all these new things, also brought a new treatment of the Earth, the treatment of the Earth as a complex system of fragile feedback loops. In the intellectual climate of 1970s, then emerges a special hypothesis, a hypothesis called Gaia, which looks at our planet as a self-regulating system, which keeps stable conditions for survival of life on the surface of the planet. And together with first photographs of the Earth from the outer space, which were published during the Apollo missions in 1960s, cybernetic ideas then became a cornerstone of a new vision, not just on the universe, but also on geopolitics, on international order. This view was based on a praise of global cooperation and also a praise of global unification. And it was also the new spirit of capitalism, that was hidden here, waiting for the end of the Cold War to establish a truly global economy. And of course, together with this imagination of the world as a unified system, came also a new fantasy, a fantasy of control of this system, of its resources and of its populations. Now, at the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century, we stand on a crossroad. The old cosmology has proven insufficient, as the current form of the global economy was actually one of the main causes of the ongoing environmental collapse. And on top of that, global capitalism also reinforced many injustices and many violences. And under the banner of the old world, it actually shaped deep divisions between our communities. The new cosmology is not yet born, a new cosmology that would actually replace this old geopolitical order, and a new cosmology that would also bring the new geopolitical order in this sense. But we can at least trace some basic features of this new cosmology that should bring new geopolitics. Let's start with cybernetics, because cybernetics gave us a certain new model or a new perspective on a planet. And the ecological emergency brought its substantial revision, actually. Because on the one hand, yes, it is still true that the planet is a complex system, but on top of that, it is also something that exceeds our controlling capacities. Instead of planet that would adapt to us, we face the urgency to adapt to the limits that the planet imposes on us. And that means that our role in the planetary drama is different than we imagined before, because we are not the main actors, only intermediaries. The planet that emerges from this new perspective is the planet that becomes the primary place to which we belong, one which we can learn to experience and even learn to be emotionally attached to. Because, as we say at the Digital Earth, the planetary is hidden in every grain of sand. And to explain this, just look in your surroundings, your immediate surroundings. If you look properly, you can learn to see traces of processes and events that are truly planetary. Planetary movements of materials, planetary circulation of energy, and so on. As an example, think about the computer you have perhaps on your table right now. The computer which is assembled from the materials that come from all over the world. Or think about particles of sand in the air that you breathe that might have come from a distant desert. Or think even about carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is actually a result of burning corpses of prehistoric creatures. And a question that this argument leads to, the question I seek in my thought, and the question I invite you to think about with me now, is the following one. If the clockwork was the template of early modern cosmology, the cosmology of individuals and mechanisms, and if computer replaced this cosmology to bring a new one, a cosmology of complex systems, what technology then took over the place of clockwork in our age of the climate change and ecological emergency? I'm not sure, but perhaps it's artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, which this wonderful capacity to digest complexity of our world sometimes better than us humans can. Maybe it's planetary information networks, digital platforms, blockchains. Perhaps it's different technologies for capturing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere of our planet. Maybe it's renewables, and maybe it's all of this combined together. But I'm still hesitant. I'm hesitant to name the real game changer. And I'm not even sure, in cases of some of these technologies, whether these technologies are the poisons or the remedies for our era. And similarly, I can only guess how the cosmology that emerges from the current situation can look like. But one thing I know for sure is that the new cosmology needs to be crafted in the spirit of planetary cooperation. This new cosmology is the only way how to bring the more human, more digital, and also more ecological Earth to come. Because new cosmologies need also new cosmopolitanism. And cosmopolitanism is a kind of political community that we can be all part of as inhabitants of the same universe and of the same planet Earth. This kind of political community will cherish the diversity of perspective and diversity of knowledges as a kind of necessary condition for our collective survival. Of course, new economy also needs new actors, new ethos of research, and new modes of knowledge production. That is, of course, not an easy task, but if we opt to slog through the hard stuff of philosophy, of economy, of psychology, of design, art, architecture, and all the other disciplines that at once invent and interpret the cosmological shift that occurs in our era, we have a hope. We have a hope to turn the ideal of the new cosmopolitanism into reality. So the cosmic background of our society needs to be cosmic in double sense. The first sense is the one I've guided you through in this lecture, because we need to be aware of how cosmologies shape our societies and also how we can change these societies through changing these cosmologies. But the second sense in which our perspective needs to be cosmic is much more literal, even if at the first glance too fantastic to be true. Because we need not only new cosmologies, we also need more cosmic perspective, which is a kind of perspective that properly situates us as vulnerable species of astronauts. Astronauts wandering through the cosmos on, at least for this moment, still indispensable planetary home, the Earth. This is just a small footnote, but an important one, because I want to acknowledge a few thinkers that this talk is based on, and mainly on their theoretical work. And that's namely Bentley B. Allen, Benjamin H. Bratton, Federico Campagna, Lauren Daston, Duke Hui, Lisa Messieri, and Patricia Reed. It wouldn't be possible to assemble this talk without reading and learning about the cosmology through the perspective of their theoretical practice.